I'll see you guys in the dark.
I cannot tell you the name, or where I live, or even the specialty within which I practice medicine. I cannot do so, for I have been shamed, embarrassed, and at times stigmatized. Even today, years later, I fear retribution, liability, even persecution. Some of this may have been deserved at one time, but today my story is one of success. It is a story of hope, of support, and of recovery. I share this intimate tale so that you may hear the human side of addiction, of its treacherous grip, and of the freedom and confidence from which I have emerged from this terrifying illness. My drug use did not begin until medical school. I was never a drinker in high school or even in college, nor did I use it socially. Then one evening when I was finding it hard to stay awake to study for an organic chemistry exam, a friend directed me to some stimulants that were available in sample form. The result was perfect. I began using the pills, rather innocently, whenever I needed a boost at least. To me, it was like a cup of coffee, only better. I soon learned that I could order the pills on the internet and have a supply whenever it was needed. Upon graduation, I entered practice determined to be the best doctor possible. I spent a great deal of time with my patients, who kept coming back to me. My patient load grew exponentially, and I had trouble keeping pace. I had no experience running a business. I was working long hours, and was unable to juggle the growing load. I found myself taking more and more pills just to keep up, and then even more to get me to sleep again. I gave little thought to this use. After all, I was no street junkie making covert deals in dark alleys. I was a good doctor, with many patients, using my medical knowledge to make the path towards success a little bit smoother, or at least so I thought. My use escalated. In addition to internet orders, I would write prescriptions in the names of my family members. Suddenly, my uncle had knee pain. My father-in-law had back problems. My aunt had arthritis. I did not think about the record I was establishing of their purported use. I was out of control, but getting by, taking many pills to get through each day. Throughout this time, I still felt on top, despite my drug use. I was a physician with a thriving practice. I provided quality care and had no patient complaints. I had a wife and children that relied upon me and saw me as a great provider. My friends and family admired me. I was respected in the community. I enjoyed my status and felt it was deserved, having achieved academically as well as socially since childhood. And then one day, the Drug Enforcement Agency came to the door inquiring about fraudulent prescriptions. The reality of the situation took months to sink in. My reaction was disbelief. I was no druggie, certainly no criminal. I was an admired and respected physician. I was sure the entire misunderstanding would be cleared up with a smile and an apology. I could not have been more wrong. The shame and magnitude of my tumble was immeasurable. Not only did I face the legal and professional ramifications of having written improper prescriptions, but I had to cope with the personal humiliation of a fall from grace. I was no longer the icon of success I had worked a lifetime to achieve. I was now tainted, not only in the eyes of my colleagues, but also, for the very first time, in my hometown. Fortunately, when everything was crumbling around me, I got support and advice. With the guidance of the physician health services, I got into a treatment program that helped me realize that I suffered from a illness and was both worthy and deserving of help. I was medically detoxified from the effects of the medication I had now stopped taking. I learned to take responsibility for my behaviors, but also to recognize that I had been sick and could certainly get well. I learned that addiction would be a lifelong condition, but not a lifelong impairment, and I agreed to a long-term monitoring contract with PHS. To comply with this contract, I had to work hard. I saw a therapist to address issues of addiction, shame, honesty, and interpersonal relationships. I submitted to regular and random drug screens. I attended support group meetings, met with sponsors and mentors, and in doing so, changed my life dramatically. After months of treatment, out of state, learning about my disease, and learning about myself, I came back home feeling strong. I was healthy, drug-free, clear thinking, and ready to pull my career back together. Unfortunately, my career was not ready for me, despite the fact that I had never had a malpractice case and had never harmed a patient. There would be months of waiting for the licensing board to address my petition to go back to work. I would be investigated, questioned, and challenged. This process lasted for months on end, and when I did get my license, it was with extensive restrictions and requirements for informing everyone with whom I had professional contact of my probationary status and of my disease. These required disclosures that led to a new round of inquiries by third-party credentialing agencies, without which I would not sustain a practice. So I began the journey again. More questions, more disclosures, more humiliation. The greatest challenge of all was the subsequent public disgrace. The day my license was finally restored, a press release issued informing the public of my professional discipline. My name became front-page news, highlighted by lurid references to drugs, diversion, and criminal activity. There was no mention of my recovery from the illness, nor of the months and years of personal work and growth that I had achieved. What was to be a day of celebration had become a day of pain and shame. My daughter had a soccer game that day, and through tears, even she had the face of humiliation, which I had hoped was well in the past. Although I was angry and frustrated with the obstacles that I was facing, I had now the tools to deal with this stress. Through PHS, I had a physical support group where I could meet and learn from other doctors who faced the same struggles. I had an outlet for sharing my experiences and for learning from example that there was indeed hope for my future. And most importantly, I had my sobriety and my health. Ultimately, I did return to practice. It was no easy journey. The process took many years. During this time, I was doubted by others, and I doubted myself. But now I am stronger. I have the confidence of knowing that whatever ills befall me, I can heal from it. As a result, I am a better healer. My practice is now as successful as ever. I continue to be board certified in my specialty. I continue to provide quality care. I also have additional contributions to make to my profession. I am more open-minded and less likely to pass judgment. I have learned that medicine is not about being powerful or respected, but about being respectful and compassionate. I have learned that physicians, like all people, have the susceptibility to become ill and the capacity to become well. However, to encourage wellness, we, as a profession, need to provide resources, not shame and humiliation. I am now sober and can't imagine facing life any other way. And I share this so that all my colleagues in the medical field will know that they, too, can embark successfully upon this journey. I'm 25 years old. I spent some of my childhood in Ireland. I also spent some of my childhood in Alberta. At age 14, I was smoking marijuana and tobacco daily, multiple times a day. Smoking helped me forget who I was. The feeling of getting out of my own skin was amazing. Since that first hit, I loved it. I knew then I am able to get out of myself, and I can use the substance to change how I feel, or not feel at all. That's exactly what I wanted at that point in my life. At age 15, I was smoking at any moment I could, and soon found out that everyone around me was drinking alcohol, so I thought that I would try it as well. I thought my parents and siblings drank, so it couldn't be that bad. I drank so much that first time that I got very sick. Truth is, I didn't like drinking, but it was socially acceptable, so I drank as much as I could. I couldn't seem to get enough of it. My drinking and marijuana continued for 2 years. At the age of 17, I began to wonder. I began to realize I was not good at school or sports, so what am I going to do with my life? I was hanging around with the wrong people who told me that I didn't need school, and all I needed was them. And it was all right. I did believe them. I was looking for something to belong to. I felt at home. I said yes and used cocaine for the first time. It didn't faze me, and I began using it at school, and eventually got enough so that I could make some extra cash. One of my mistakes was bringing this substance to school to sell to my classmates. I was very successful, but the principal caught on. and a long story short, I got kicked out of my school. My family was furious. I continued my schooling at home and did quite well. My family thought that it was all over from there, but it did not change who I was spending time with. It did not change my relationship with drugs and alcohol. From what I remember, it was to be cool, to fit in with a certain crowd. As far as I could remember, I did not fit in with anyone and wanted to be a part of something. I just wanted people to enjoy my presence and to like who I was. But to tell you the truth, I didn't know who I was, and I didn't like myself. I felt worthless from a young age, and that developed into an even lower level of self-esteem as a teenager. A few years went by, which were the most eye-opening years of my life. Now that I look back at them, brown sugar, that brown substance was heroin, something that I had never felt before in my life. I had never felt so lost in my mind. It was amazing. I was hooked. I loved it. At this point, I am in my early 20s and didn't drink, didn't smoke marijuana, didn't use cocaine anymore. I was using strictly heroin, that substance I was so curious about. What I thought was heroin turned out to be a substance called fentanyl, something I didn't know about. I did love it though. I couldn't feel worthless. I couldn't feel in pain. I felt loved. Not by the people, but by this substance. This was the sickest and most toxic relationship I have ever experienced in my life. I was addicted since day one, since that first time I smoked a joint. But I thought this was the life. This is the way to live. This was the connection I had longed for. Nothing stood in between myself and this relationship. I was lonely. I lost everything. An amazing career, lifelong friends. I burned all those bridges. I didn't mean to, though. Even before we were born, my twin brother Kyron and I were inseparable. It's hard to describe the bond of siblings, as many of you know, but it's probably even harder to really understand the connection between two people who shared a womb together at the same time and took almost every breath of life not more than a few meters from each other. But the only way that I can put it is that my twin was my other half. Kyron and I found ourselves, without really understanding how or why, addicted to opiates among other things. We hid our addiction well from our family, but things got really bad fast. Kyron and I began not to get along so much, even though with it we lived together, worked together, partied together, and even used together. We still kept our secrets, and nobody seemed to know what was going on with us. Then on November 25th of 2013, he and I talked. We made up after a period of not being together. We told each other that we loved each other, and hugged. He did his drug test that day at work. On the morning of November 26th, I noticed his truck was still in the driveway, and I went to go get him out of bed. I found Kyron had passed away at some time during the night. He overdosed on fentanyl. This was the moment that my life changed forever. We had done everything right. We worked hard. We loved and were loved by our families. We were young with everything ahead of us, but Kyron didn't make it, and I did. If that wasn't hard enough, it's crazy to know that I still used for a month after finding my twin brother dead from an overdose. That's how hard this thing is. It wasn't easy to take the first step, even after that. Don't ever underestimate the power of an addiction. But I went to treatment at Cobble Hill and began my life of recovery on January 5th, 2014. I had been clean and sober ever since. And every day that I live, I am clean because of the strength I have been given by my brother, my family, and an amazing network of people around me supporting my recovery. For some, it is also their recovery. Kyron is still my other half, though he is not physically with me. He is guiding me on my path through life, clean, conscious, and coming to terms with the darkness of my grief, loss, and my sadness. I lost him, and I may never know why. I only understand what his loss compels me to do, to choose life every single day, to live for myself and the people that I love, to help others so that they might not be faced with the same fate. Addiction and recovery involves everyone that they touch. My family has undergone major transformations, some positive, some of them not so positive, but with each change, a consequence of dealing with and moving beyond addiction and towards a more conscious life path. Drugs didn't do this to us. Addiction did. That is what we have to overcome, because there will always be drugs no matter what. Even if drugs were eradicated, there would be something else feeding addiction. We must deal with and think beyond addiction. When Kyron passed away, that was the deciding point in going to treatment for addiction. My decision changed my life for the better. I got help with that problem. That's not to say that I am perfect. I do absolutely have my problems. Being at Cedars helped me realize quickly that it wasn't so much the drugs, but my behaviors as well. I found out through my family history that I have wired an addiction since the day that I was born. But now I can deal with that. I have the tools to be all right with myself. I love myself to this day. I love who I can be and who I am. I learned that it is okay to be who I was. I'm proud of who I am today. Thanks to the 12-step program, I can work through all the behaviors and catch myself before I act out on them again. The program that I am in today helps me actually feel my feelings, and I am constantly reminded of the fact that my feelings will not kill me. The program gives me a meaning today. It helps me move forward in life. The 12 steps are amazing tools for myself and others to work on throughout my life. I thought that I had been through it all, but I was mistaken. When I thought all was well, tragedy hit my life once again. Once again, I lost the closest person to me, my best friend. In January of 2016, my best friend overdosed and passed away. He was the person who understood me, who understood what exactly I was going through with my brother. He was always there for me. Now I have lost two extremely important people in my life. I got through it clean and sober, all thanks to my recovery and the program. Being in this program gave me the tools to get through tragedy. I sit here today, telling the story of my life, grateful for being alive, for being able to live once again. I'm not here to say that it was easy, because it is extremely difficult to keep going. Without my twin brother Kyron and my best friend Matt, I know that they would both want me to be happy and continue on in my recovery. Kyron and Matt are all with us. They are here with me now, giving me the courage to tell all of you, to courageously share my story, and to encourage others to feel compassion for people like us, people who love and are loved, and who need your solidarity to overcome this powerful thing called addiction. I am finding ways to complete myself, to compensate for the loss of my other half, as well as my best friend, and I will get there if it takes a lifetime, because I know that I am worth it. I have been a part of Tinder for a while. I have had some pretty good dates, and a few bad dates. There are 3 ladies in particular that were absolutely batshit crazy, and here are my stories. The first lady I met in New York City, Times Square to be exact, on a day that was just cold enough to make your tongue stick to a pole, but not cold enough to make you want to crawl up under covers and not move until June. We met on one of the streets. I greeted her with a hug. She had grabbed my hand, and then we began to walk to our destination. Now at first, I didn't think anything about it. We ate dinner, had some conversation, proceeded to walk to another place. She grabbed my arm. We were walking down the street, interlocked like a barrel of monkeys. At first, I thought it was pretty cool, until she wanted to hold my hands on a day it was colder than Santa's nose. I wanted to stick my hands in my pocket and then walk through the streets of New York because they were polluted with people, as it was Super Bowl. She then demanded that we hold hands. No, you have to hold my hand. It's a requirement. She was walking pretty slow. It was really cold. We were holding hands. And I really wasn't sure if I liked her or not. I had enough. I let go and said that we needed to walk faster. She stood there in the middle of the block. She didn't move. I turned around and started a staring contest with her. I had to put my foot down. I didn't want to hold hands, and I felt violated being forced to engage in boyfriend-girlfriend behavior with a girl that I hardly knew. After about 5 minutes, or more like 20 seconds, that felt like 5 minutes, I turned around and then kept walking. She turned and went home. I never saw her again. To my credit, I told her that I wanted to take things pretty slow. Lady number 2. It's like the woman that I'm meeting on Tinder just keep getting more strange. This one, I didn't really want to meet, but during all of my travels, I got really bored and found a match. So one night, I had absolutely nothing to do. I wasn't feeling like staying in my room, so we decided on a meetup. She was pretty cool. She had long hair, laughed at all of my jokes. We talked on the phone a lot, sent each other text messages for a day, and when we met, it was like I met one of the girls from BAPS. This girl was pretty nice, but she didn't have all of the marbles. We went out to a very nice, rather upscale spot to eat and drink. She proceeded to act like she has never been out on a nice date before. Think of those vines. She acted like a fool. The following phrases came out of her mouth. Can I snag these glasses? Regular Hennessy? Can I take this vase? I'm definitely an alcoholic. My brother bought a natty ice at 10 a.m., and if we do that, I'm going to stalk you. I think she was just playing, but I really didn't want to take any chances. I faked like I was tired, and then ended the date pretty fast. Lady number 3. I actually never really did meet her. In fact, I had forgotten all about her. I have a habit of getting matches on there and never sending a single message. But this one woman sent me the message first. We began to talk, and then we exchanged numbers. It started with a few messages, then a phone call. She cursed a lot, but I figured that it was just a New York thing. One day during a conversation, she had told me that she wanted to get to know me a little bit better before she jumped on my dick and let me screw her brains out. One day after I hadn't called her or texted her, she called me, cursed a lot, said the F word a lot of times. I was pretty impressed. I thought that she was a bit crazy. So not really caring, I quoted John Mayer, jokingly, which was a bad idea. She flipped out and cursed even more, started to threaten me, and texting me until about 2 a.m. It was definitely the strangest thing that I have ever experienced. I never met this woman in person, but I haven't given up on Tinder yet. I think I will never learn.
My name is Molly. I'm in my late 20s. I'm a writer living in Virginia. I have grown up here. I love to travel. I love books, makeup, and all those good things. I was stalked when I was 17. It lasted for about a year. It started the summer before my senior year of high school, and it didn't end until I was in my first year of college. I had known the guy who stalked me since I was in the 4th grade. We hung out with the same folks. We were really good friends for the last couple of years, leading up until he started acting pretty strange. He considered me his best friend. He was just a little bit older than I was, so he graduated and was ahead to college when he lost it and things started. I think something about moving away affected him and helped set him off. It actually began with him telling me something about a party a little bit down the road. We happened to live in the country. We drove to the house. No one was home. What followed was sexual assault. The odd thing about my story is that it begins with my sexual assault, then turns into stalking right afterwards. I didn't deal with it well. My parents and I did as much as we could to get the law involved. We got a restraining order on him. Unfortunately, after that, I came home and told no one and did nothing, so there wasn't a whole lot that the police could do without any evidence. Although he did leave these really disgusting letters in my car about what he'd done to me during the assault, that wasn't enough evidence for them. The peak of the stalking was that winter when he started coming into the house and watching me sleep. After a few weekends of feeling like I was crazy for feeling like someone was in my house, I actually woke up with him standing in the doorway of my bedroom. This was about 4 months after the assault. My nerves were completely shot, even though it wasn't probably the smartest thing to do. My fight or flight had kicked into gear, and I ended up chasing him out of my house. I'm not sure what I would have done if I had caught him. I think by then I was at my end, and so I believed that I'd be able to hurt him if I could get my hands on him. By that point, I was really starting to deal with the assault. I'd almost completely stopped eating because my nerves were shot. I wasn't sleeping much. The stalking took over most of everyday life. I was constantly nervous, and I developed ulcers. My parents were afraid to leave me alone, so my dad would sit outside of the shoe store that I worked at some evenings. I'd close the store, and my parents were afraid that the guy would catch me in there, or on my way out to the car. I can't really describe what it felt like to basically have to accept that I wasn't really safe. Part of me actually felt better once I started to admit it. I remember that it really frustrated me that my parents wanted to convince me that they could keep me safe. I don't think parents can be prepared to deal with something like that. After I woke up with him in the house, I told one of my friends about the assault and about what had happened. She was sleeping over that night, so she was asleep in my bed with me. I felt terrible, and still do, that she experienced what it's like to wake up with an intruder in the home. She went home, told her brother almost everything right away. He was my stalker's age, and was friends with him. Her brother was in a group of nerdy skateboard riding guys that I was good friends with. Those guys got in someone's car, drove the 4 hours south to my stalker's college. I'm not sure what had happened from there. I know that the guy was okay afterwards, because he did contact me right after that. I think they did what they could to convince him that they would hurt him if he didn't leave me alone. We all grown up in this tiny little place with a high school of probably about 400 kids. We were all close, and we all knew each other pretty well. In that way, it makes me sad that something like that would blow up, especially in such a calm circle of friends. I'd advise someone going through something exactly like this to try to get the police involved as much as possible. In my case, my stalker came to see me the very next day after he was served with that restraining order. This was his way of letting me know that it wasn't going to affect him whatsoever. Not getting the police involved wouldn't help either. There's a chance that they may be able to do something. I'd suggest that people would talk to other people about what's happening. When I didn't tell anyone about it, it only left me feeling more crazy and isolated. Things got harder once my close friends knew what was happening, but it also made what was happening more real to me, in a good way. I think we sometimes have a tendency to try to keep something from being entirely true by just not telling anyone about it.
I would occasionally ask my mother if she had any real scary stories that she would share with me. I thrive off of that stuff. She chose not to mention this one until I was old enough to hear it. This story takes place in Canada during the late 60s, when my now deceased grandmother was in her early 30s. She decided to drive to our town's convenience store after dark to pick up a couple of things. She had finally just managed to get her 4 children to sleep, left my grandfather to take over while she hopped in the car and made that 10-minute drive. Back then, the road from their house to the store had very few neighbors. It was mostly just woods on the other side of the 2 lanes. After buying a couple of things that she needed, she left the store, jumped back into her car, pulled out onto the road for her route home. A few moments later, during the drive, she hears sounds like newspaper rustling in the back seat of the car. Startled, she checks her rearview mirror to find out the cause of it. Instead of seeing the usual empty road or a set of headlights reflecting back, it was a man's face in the back seat. Scared to death, she instantly hit the brakes, just hard enough to shock this man, probably giving him some whiplash. Jumped out of her car. She began screaming loud enough for the people near the store who could hopefully hear her. Having this man's plan foiled, whatever it may be, took this opportunity to escape and ran into the woods, out of sight. After getting back to the store and calling the police, my grandmother found a cloth covered in chloroform in the back seat. Just a note, luckily a couple from a house nearby heard my grandmother's screams, helped calm her down, and then took her home. My grandfather said that she was unable to speak for hours, only able to muster up the necessary details for the police, who were the ones who detected that it was chloroform on the cloth. Poor thing didn't drive for 6 months after this incident. The man was never caught, though. I once had this boyfriend. He seemed like a great guy, but let me tell you, he was a monster. A complete and utter monster. A vile piece of shit at that. I hate myself for ever getting involved with this guy. Anyways, this is how the story goes. I was hanging outside of the bowling alley one night, as I did every weekend. There was a petite, shy girl with a thin figure and long blonde hair. I was shy and quiet and reserved. I was chilling with my friends when this super cute guy with long black hair, a goatee, and a leather jacket pulled up on his dirt bike. His name was Joey. All of the girls loved Joey. Joey noticed me, and he asked me out. Of course, I said yes. Joey was 19 years old at the time, and I was 15. We hit it off very quickly, and he was super sweet. As the months went on, he moved in with me and my parents, and we were engaged. Suddenly, Joey's behavior had changed. Joey started smoking meth, started staying out all night long, and started stealing things. The cops were always at the house. He got arrested multiple times. My parents got really fed up with Joey's shit and told him to get the fuck out of the house. A few weeks go by, and we noticed that we haven't been getting our mail. My parents called the post office, asked what the problem was. They told my parents that the mail had been delivered. Suddenly, my father got a notification on his phone that his credit score has dropped from 800-something to 0. Joey was arrested a few weeks later, and apparently Joey had been using the deep web to steal my father's credit card information. He'd also stolen 10 other people's credit card info and was stealing the information online for thousands of dollars to the highest bidder. I had no idea that Joey even knew how to do that shit. Joey was arrested and charged with larceny, grand theft, identity theft, and several other charges. Joey got 35 years in prison. Apparently, Joey was part of a racketeering gang that socialized in mail theft and credit card theft, and also sold meth and prescription pills. They did all this online from one of the guy's grandmother's basements and ripped off hundreds of people. Joey had apparently gotten involved with some people shortly after his cousin Ron had gotten out of prison for beating the fuck out of his girlfriend. John was a meth addict and a two-bit criminal until him and Joey met Douglas, a computer genius and former intelligence officer who was fired and lost his badge forever due to his involvement in an illegal gambling ring back in 1996. They used the web browser Tor and set up very powerful VPNs. Very complicated and sophisticated shit that I'm just way too stupid to ever understand. Douglas wanted to become a millionaire and figured that if he ripped off enough people, he'd be able to start his own business and generate more income. From what I heard, Joey and Ron made one tiny mistake, and the FBI was able to track them and shut down the whole operation. Ron was murdered in prison because apparently he had a side business, and the prisoners had found out about it. I won't get into detail about Ron's side business, but let's just say that it involved some really sick shit. Yeah, so that's my deep web story. I've never gone to the deep web, but I've seen the havoc that it can wreak on people's lives. My father was able to rebuild his credit, and Joey's parents were too embarrassed by Joey's actions and helped repay the thousands of dollars that Joey had stolen from multiple people, including my father. This happened a little while ago, so I'm still playing it over and over in my head. I thought this would be a good place to share. I'm a pretty predictable person, with a predictable schedule. I'm not really sure if it was a random occurrence, or if someone knew my nightly routine. I'm a 30-year-old woman. My husband gets up for work hours before me, so he goes to bed before I do. I usually just go to bed a few hours after he does, around the same time every night. I turn off the lights and TV in my living room. I go to take the dog out back to let her out. The door leads to a large deck. Off on the right of the deck is a few steps down, a small path to the gate, which we always keep chained and locked up. Every night before opening up that door, I peek out of my window right next to it without disturbing the blinds. I flip on the deck light. I never expect anyone or anything to be there. We've never had a single problem with people trespassing or trying to break in. That's just something that I do every night. Kind of like peeking behind the shower curtain before I pee. I know no one is back there, but if I don't go check it out, then that's going to be the one time that there might be someone hiding. I watch a ton of horror movies, and it's pitch black outside at night where I live. So when this happened, I was getting ready for bed. Went to the back door with the dog, slowly following behind. Peeked out of my window. I flipped on that light. My heart jumped into my throat when I saw a skinny, dirty guy that was probably in his 20s or 30s, standing off on the side of the door, facing it. I see him raise his arm up, hold up a screwdriver above his head as soon as the light went on, preparing for someone to open up that door. I screamed at my husband to get up and get the gun as loudly as I could, which startled this guy. He jumped over the rail of the deck, even though he was right next to the stairs, and then he ran. My husband went out of the bedroom door with the gun. He called the police. They showed up within 10 minutes. They drove around trying to find the guy, but they couldn't find him. The guy broke the lock on our gate just to get in. He also pried open the back screen door, which we always keep locked as well. If I would have opened up the door without looking out first, I just might be dead. I don't know if I had just caught him breaking in, or if he was waiting for me to open up the door like I do every single night. Either way, I was terrified. My parents are buying us outdoor security cameras for an early birthday present for my husband. When I was in middle school, I would like to play in the woods behind my parents' house. Not far down from the road was a trailer park that was notorious for meth and drug dealing. One day I was building forts like the typical 13-year-old boy, when suddenly this guy pops out of nowhere. He was carrying an AR and asked me what the hell I was doing. Luckily, him and I both knew each other because he went to school with my older sister, and the three of us rode the same bus, but we weren't friends in the least bit. This kid, who was probably 18 years old, starts questioning what I've been doing and where I've been. I just told him that I was playing forts and shit. He takes the AR and fires off a few rounds in the middle of me explaining what I'm doing. He went on to threaten me, telling me how easy it would be for him to shoot me and how no one would ever know. He finished by saying some bullshit about how he liked me and he didn't want to hurt me one bit. He told me that if I wanted to keep playing in those woods, that I should never ever go past this certain point, or else he wouldn't hesitate to shoot me. I quickly left, ran back to my parents' house. The way he was talking, I knew that he was growing pot out in the woods. I never told a single person about this encounter, not even my parents. Now I wish I had called the cops and given them my story, had that bastard put in jail. But the dude is serving life in prison now, so he got what was coming to him in the end. In my hometown, there's a movie theater next to the highway. I was walking on the bridge. A guy told me, "Will you help me? Please help me. My sister is lost near this movie theater." He had braces, looked like he was probably 19 or 20. He was around 6 feet tall, definitely a lot larger than me. I was around 19 at this time. He was pointing to the back parking lot of the theater that had no cars. I thought for a moment about helping him, but he had this bugged out wild look in his eyes. My gut told me not to do it. I said I'm sorry, but I have to catch the bus. He then followed me, saying, "Let me look up your dress." I told him to screw off. The guy seemed to love me getting angry, and then he sped away. Last year, right around the weekend of Halloween, I was late to show up to a friend's party. I had a dinner to go to across town. When I left, it was probably around 9 p.m. I had an hour drive ahead of me. But if I took a shortcut into a not-so-safe part of town, I would save probably about 30 minutes. That was a big mistake. As I'm waiting at a red light in the sketchiest part of town, I look over to the sidewalk. I see 3 men dressed as the Purge heading towards my vehicle. I look around and see that there are no other cars, no pedestrians, nothing around. These guys start coming over to me faster now, all of them carrying some kind of weapon. One had a baseball bat, one a crowbar, and I think the other one was carrying an axe. Whether they were just playing a prank or not, it was still the scariest experience of my life, especially because right before the light had turned green, they approached my window. One of them even tried to pull on my passenger side handle right before I sped off. After that had happened, I went into a parking lot that I knew was safe, and I sat there and calmed myself down. I definitely won't be doing that ever again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.